Um, ways, but
I apologize, everybody. There, are we good?
got
If
it.
anyone is on the meeting, are you able to raise your hand or just unmute and say that you're able to hear us? I apologize for that. We should be. It's got to be.
You're good now.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
Okay, at this point, it's a difficult issue, but I need to bring to the board's attention for the past year, we've tried different fee structures, and since we've gone to a flat fee, I don't feel confident that we're getting the legal advice. Even reflecting back, I have concerns about legal advice, and as is exhibited by this property question. And so I would like, I had asked the district manager to get information about law firms that are available. We had 2 that were going to be present, and we do have 1 representative here from pt2, who is here in case you have any questions of him. Competent legal counsel for CDD. There are lots of CDDs that are coming online. They are becoming more and more scarce. So at this point in time, I would like to ask the board to consider going out and requesting qualification packages unless there's a further decision tonight to further consider our options for legal counsel.
I would not entertain changing legal counsel. It's pretty clear that the chairwoman and current counsel don't get along very well. Seems like 2 opposing lawyers in the courtroom at almost every single meeting. I think current counsel has been here for most of 20 years, and until recently, we haven't had the opposite or opposition towards counsel's opinions and advice. And I would move that we retain current legal counsel. And that's a motion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I would like to bring several items to the attention of the board during this discussion period. Again, ever since we've gone to the flat fee, our legal representation has been lacking. For instance, our contracts have been primarily handled by Sylvia, cutting and pasting the documents together. We've found significant problems with the contracts. We've been having difficulties with policies, our tree policy, although all we wanted was a very simple policy. Took numerous months to finally get out of the gate, and that was only after Matthew Pippin helped us out with us and Brett assisted. We had a problem with our towing contract. It was sent before I was able to review it to the provider, and the provider went forward with it. Because he was provided it, it did not include any of the statutory language that was necessary to be in it, or any of the indicators of when and how they could tow. It resulted in 2 of our residents' cars being towed inappropriately that we then had to work to get their cost refunded. I just have not seen the performance even before the flat fee. when we want a policy, there was the no solicitation policy. We paid our legal firm time for their efforts in putting that together. And what it ended up was that Mr. Farnsworth pulled something off the internet. And my understanding is you went ahead and tweaked it, Supervisor Castle. And that's what we ended up adopting. It wasn't a product from the legal research or writing of our attorney's office. Same thing happened with the procurement policy. It's been quite frustrating and you know, luckily there is some legal background available, but it just can't continue on with. For instance, this particular issue with the property, I asked for a full review of it. And there were no questions answered. There was no, the flat out statement was, we'll just turn it over to the developer. Don't worry about it, just turn it over to the developer. And there were so many other issues that instead, I as chairman should not have to go out and do all this research, but I ended up doing all the research instead of our legal counsel doing it. We have the COVID issue. The thing is, when we employ an attorney who covers a number of districts, they spread the cost of a new issue such as COVID out over a number of issues, a number of CEDs that they represent. In this case, I went back and looked at the billings, and we were billed over $7,400 for research and advice on the COVID issues. Another community development district that Mr. Qualls' firm represents, their bill for COVID issues was $3,500. So that's about $11,000 between two districts. Not sure, the largest bills for research, I know there will be some billings that will be unique to the particular district, but the majority of them should be split between all the districts. And I don't know the exact circumstances, but that's a high cost to pay for advice about the COVID issue, even though it was a unique and a very difficult issue to deal with. I am not minimizing it at all. The other issue is I really would like to see the district move forward on different possibilities of recouping some of the money that was spent in legal fees for the Harmony Retail versus Steve Berube personally lawsuit. The legal advice that was given during that period of time, I don't think was in the best interest of the district. I feel that the advice should have, and this was before my time on the board, should have come out and clearly stated, you have insurance for that. But instead, we ended up paying Mr. Qualls' law firm over $47,000 in legal fees for something that our insurance company should have footed the bill on. And I truly don't think, I think there might be one individual that understood that issue well, but I don't think the other supervisors really truly were given the advice to fully understand the issue and why it would be important for it to go straight to the insurance company. So that's my position on this. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this?
To your last point, a duly authorized board took a duly authorized vote to provide a defense to that lawsuit against me. You can call it personal if you want. It was all related to district business.
That's correct. And I have no argument with providing you. I have no
turn to talk. And counsel was asked, should we send this to the insurance company? And during that meeting, he said, there was no reason to send it to the company. I mean, there is no reason to not send it to the insurance company. Supervisor Castle made a motion to turn it over to insurance. That same board at that time said, No, we're gonna provide a defense. You have a duty to defend. Insurance is not a defense, end of story. And it's well known, and council has rebutted many of your concerns that you just brought up in meeting after meeting. His version of what you asked for versus feedback are two different things. And it's, you two go like this. So he's on edge when he's dealing with you, you're on edge when you're dealing with him, and you have this problem. I made my motion to retain counsel. We have a second.
Okay, it sounds like he's called.
You brought up the point that Mr. Qualls knows that I was upset with regarding the issue that you just raised. My sense was that Mr. Qualls should have covered more of the advantages of providing legal representation through our insurance at the time. I want to say that it is wonderful that we have a chair who has a legal background and can be evaluating things in a way that the rest of us who do not have that background or experience would not understand or be aware of in any way. I do appreciate that. I think the board should appreciate that. Clearly, there is a level of discomfort or a level of lack of trust or a level of, I'm not sure how to put it into words, but some questioning perhaps on both sides, on the chairman's side, chairwoman's side, and their legal representation. I think, okay, I am not ready to decide on other legal representation tonight. I'm not ready to say whether we should go forward with that. I do understand where you're coming from, and I do understand the issues that you've raised. I did review the proposals, and I think perhaps we just maybe need a little more information and time before we make that decision. I am not going to, well, I'll just leave it there.
Okay. My thoughts, having gone back and reviewed the meetings that took place, regarding the representation of chair at the time, Berube. I mean, that's an accurate telling of events that, there's the separate question of should there be representation, was the suit stemming from actions taken as, their position on the board. And then the separate question of should we refer to insurance? I was pretty sure I was at both those meetings. I, disagreed with the decision that was made at the time to not pursue insurance that we're paying for and could be covered. But district council serves at the pleasure of the board, and that was the direction that was given at the time. So I'm absolutely cognizant of there being some friction and maybe some opportunities to make sure we're getting the best of the best possible coverage. But I, along with Supervisor Castle, I'm not ready to make any changes, especially based on if it was action that was taken at the direct direction of the board, as much as I might have disagreed with it at the time.
Okay, this time I'll call the question. All in favor?
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Long
Motion to
time ago.
retain current legal counsel.
I move that we retain current legal counsel.
Okay,
And I will say, just to go back to a little discussion, that doesn't mean that's a permanent continuance.
okay. So my understanding, the motion's to retain current counsel. And not to look at any other legal counsel at this time.
Correct. That was my intent in the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'm opposed. All right.
Madam
Sure, you're
Chairwoman, if
with
I
us,
may, and I know you, and I understand how difficult it is to sit in that chair and make those statements. I get it. I sat in that chair.
Mhm.
And I appreciate the fact that you have the tailbone to sit there and say it. It's tough. I get it. But if I may, I think, and I'm sure you are anticipating what I'm going to say, I think you and council really need to not necessarily shake hands and make up, but there needs to be more of a less frictional type relationship. I think everybody sees it. And that's not a criticism of you. You have your ways of doing things, and I've dealt with counsel for a long time. He happens to be my friend as well. And I know that there are times when he's not getting what you're putting out. And sometimes you have to be a little bit more decisive in what you want from counsel, because he's thinking over here and you're thinking over here. I get it. I've dealt with him for a long time, and we were always able to work it out. So just my suggestion. And again, I appreciate the fact that you took stood up and said what you believe. It's commendable. But the rest of us have a slightly different view. And I'm sure you're an intelligent woman. He's an intelligent man. I think you can come together in the middle, and we can probably get better performance out of council. Just
I
like
would definitely hope that that's forthcoming.
we will see.
All right, and my apologies.
Oh, no, it's all good. Keep going about the business.
Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting. Keep going.
He's an attorney. He loves watching this back and forth, right? We got a room full of attorneys here tonight.
There we go, there we
And
go.
we even got some amateur attorneys sitting around this table, or so we think. And again, Madam Chairwoman, thanks for bringing it up. Again, I can't say it enough. I know how hard it is to bring certain issues up, and many times you avoid them because it's going to be tough.
Mhm.
And not everything is cut and dried and easy to throw out there. So
All right.
thumbs up. How about that?
We'll continue moving forward so we can hopefully get to everything on our agenda. Consent agenda. It includes the approval of our December 16, 2021 regular meeting minutes, the approval of our December workshop minutes, financial statements for December 31st, 2021, and the approval of number 261 invoices and check registers.
Those bloody water bills keep
Move.
coming in high.
Move to approve, save for a requested amendment to the minutes where a vote was missing.
And I revised that, Mrs. Castle sent it to me prior to.
Okay.
So I
That was my mother, Mrs.
Okay.
Castle,
Ms. Castle.
or Dr. Castle.
Yes, Dr.
Whoa.
Castle will do very well.
Are you allowed to use that?
Yes.
We have an issue.
No, that's,
I'm
Only
allowed
in
to
print.
use it. It's
Only
just
in
what,
print.
all right.
appears in the
I'm
minutes.
sorry. We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Oh, yeah, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve with the amendment as already been made. Any discussion other than that? Hearing none, approved.
Madam Chairwoman, I
Yes.
commented about the water bill, and it's serious. They
Did we
continue to
take
be
a
high.
vote? Did we take a vote?
Huh?
I
No,
don't think
it's
we
not.
took a vote on the
No, I'm
consent
sorry,
agenda.
thank you. All in favor?
Everybody
That's
vote
it.
aye.
It's all in
Aye.
favor.
Thank you.
So
All
we
in
go to
favor, aye. I thought we did. Okay,
the
So we're
consent agenda. About the water bill, it's high again, which is typical. Does not include the filling of the pool. I checked that.
no, I made sure of that.
But the key, and where I'm going with this is, the sprinklers have been running the last several nights.
I have
In the
questioned,
rain.
I have a question both. I wanted to make sure, and Brett, I don't know if you've had the time to check since I asked. Have we switched over to the winter watering schedule? I know it's been really warm, and I don't even know the advocacy of having moved over to the winter watering schedule, being that it's been so warm and so dry. In fact, during that billing period, I went back, I've been tracking the rainfall. we had less than 3/4 of an inch during that 30-day period.
Well, I get that, but we've had a lot of rain over the last several days. And I've seen multiple zones running
Right.
in the rain.
Okay, and actually, we have not had a lot of rain. And I think, correct me,
I know it takes a
Is
certain
Fred
amount to
back
trip
there?
it off,
Or
but I
Victor?
get it.
or Vincent, it's got to continue watering to get up to what, a full inch? So turn it over for a quick summary on that one. And stepping up to the microphone is Brett Perez.
Yeah, so did reach out to Cervello pertaining the irrigation system and got a response back. They do have a current issue with Maxicom. There's a malfunction going on. Every controller is in standby mode right now. So they're actually having to basically go to and manually water from controllers, or they're running from the timer in the actual station versus the computer running it. They're working through that. The question that you had regarding a high water bill further down, Pete discussed that today. They
Yeah,
did find
yes.
that leak, so that's part of it. They should be, even though the weather's warmer, you have shorter days and longer nights. Okay, so, and you have typically less humidity, so there's more. and
Evaporation.
There's less evaporation right now because you don't have as much sunlight,
Cooler.
and it's still a cooler temp, and your nighttime temps are lower, so they should be reducing their run times.
Mhm.
They should be, because if they're not, then they're gonna be pushing a lot of fungus on top of
Right.
wasting water. What we have had a lot of issues and of late is a lot of sprinklers that have broken. So
A lot.
even during a normal cycle or runtime, you may have 5, 6, 7 heads that are just blasting out water, and instead of having a 3 gallon per minute nozzle on it, it's got no nozzle on it, and now you're blasting
60 gallons. a minute.
60 gallons a minute potentially, so.
And I want to check with that, because there have been a couple that have been brought to my attention. I go out and it doesn't appear. The nozzle heads have been unscrewed. In fact, in one case, the nozzle head was unscrewed, the sprinkler was taken apart, and the spring inside of it, because it was a pop-up, had actually been removed. So I'm not sure if we have someone harvesting sprinkler
Well,
parts
if
for
if
their
the head
own
pops off, the
property.
spring comes out.
Well,
The
she's saying the head was actually repaired. There was a new nozzle put on it. You
Right.
can see the new top on it, but there was no spring. Now, I can follow up with them, maybe when in haste of making the repair, they forgot. It doesn't make
don't-
sense, but
But the nozzle, the ring was still on, so the spring should have remained in there, because the spring
Yeah.
comes up under tension,
mhm.
the riser's up. Then when the pressure comes off, the spring pops
Pulls
it
it back
back
down.
down.
Exactly right.
So it shouldn't have,
Well, so did you visit?
the ring should have held the spring in. The nozzle came off the riser wasn't out. So, but the spring was missing, and then the nozzle, all I did was pick it up and screw it back on to fix it.
So the nozzle was off.
Somebody had unscrewed the
Well,
nozzle.
they'll come off sometimes, and when they come off, the spring is gone. It's.
No, but the nozzle coming off shouldn't impact the spring coming off.
Right, the spring, the
Sure.
collar
No,
should
because
keep
the
spring
collar,
down.
when you screw the top of the head on,
I'm sorry.
where the
I
nozzle
didn't-
seats.
That's what I'm talking about, the threaded piece,
No, she's talking about the physical nozzle. When the
Oh,
head
you're
pops
talking-
up, that
The
nozzle on
little
top
spray,
popped off.
just a little spray thing.
just
not
the
the
little
head.
spray
Correct.
thing had been
Well,
unscrewed.
the only reason that somebody would put it all back together without the spring is because they lost it, or because it might be easier to manipulate without the spring in it. You don't have to hold it up with the pliers. Leave the spring out, thing will still work.
Well, the nozzle was still on.
I know, the
It-
thing will still work without the spring.
Can I ask
Yeah,
this
but it
question
won't.
just so I get a better understanding? Teresa, were you able to see the spring, or did you unscrew the top to see if the spring was in it? Or you're just saying that the actual stem of the nozzle was still up and you just pushed it back down?
No, the nozzle was off, the stem was there, I could see the stem. I put my key down into the stem, brought it up without any resistance whatsoever. So I had to unscrew the
Okay, so once you
top,
unscrew the top, okay.
and
Because
then
sometimes the seal will actually hold the knot, the stem from sliding back
It'll
down,
keep
so
it up,
people
right.
think that it's.
But anyway, so we've got a situation where for whatever reason, a lot of our sprinklers, but basically, from this year, from last year to this year, last year was 7,000, this year is 12,500 for this time period. Now, it's been extremely dry, I understand
It
that,
was warmer this December than
and
last
a
December.
lot warmer. So, but we just need to stay on top of that.
Yep.
So.
I did note too, speaking of the irrigation, some of the pictures that have come in. There was one that came in today, a rotor that looks like maybe a lawnmower hit it.
Yeah, I sent that one.
Yeah, I know.
No,
My point to it is normally if a lawnmower is hitting and the blade's spinning, you're gonna see pretty significant damage to the plastic piece.
mhm.
That's the head, the actual rotor part.
But it
that popped
wasn't,
off.
it was actually to the under.
Which makes me believe potentially that people are vandalizing them,
Yeah,
meaning
that's
when
what
it's
I'm
on, they're
wondering.
running by and they'll kick them. And if they kick them,
Yeah.
that piece will snap off, it'll fly off, and then the water just shoots straight in the air.
Yeah.
I've seen in my tenure in the landscape industry too, where bike riders or I don't want to say kids, because there can even be golf carts, whatever. Sprinklers are on while they're driving down. There's, the wind's blowing this way. So instead of staying on the cart path, they'll ride directly over all the heads, and you can have them break that way too. Unfortunately, that's part of the
Being a
game.
community.
I hate to say that.
And depending where the mower wheels go, they may be right on the sprinkler line.
Or the
Yeah.
golf cart wheel.
Or golf, or they're just people vandalizing them riding bikes, or they've got their foot out on the golf cart and they're kicking heads as they go by. I mean, I've seen a
Mhm.
number of those. So anyways,
So anyway, that's something for you to work with Cervello on, if you would, please. All right, district managers report.
Yes. Have a few things and I'll go quickly. So I need to know if the board, usually Kristen would get approval to bill the $26,600.07 for BC one. So we need to see if the board is to approve that. And also.
In other words, the bond payment?
Yes, the debt
Yes,
payment.
let's deal with that first. So I would ask, is there a motion to transfer $26,600.07 from our general fund to the debt service fund
So
2015?
A second.
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no opposition, motion passes unanimously. All right, next.
Next is the electric and water spreadsheet for the last 2 years, comparable. That'll be in your February agenda. We pulled all the data, they're just entering it in for you. So that'll be in, I'll send it out actually before that, but moving forward, you'll start seeing that in your agenda every month. Microsoft email should be complete. I'm gonna tell you in 7 days, but it's probably more like 3. And you'll get an email and you'll get a pre-email from me, but you'll get an email from Microsoft telling you what to do, which is basically go in and set a password. Is basically what it's going to give you a temporary password, then you're going to go in, reset it to your permanent. So you should get that. I'm going to tell you 7, so there's probably more like 3.
Is this Outlook?
Microsoft
Microsoft Exchange,
Yeah.
probably.
365. Yep.
Okay.
Invoices, we don't need to talk about that. I think Paula has reached out. Some people are in the middle of training, some haven't had it yet, some have it scheduled. So once everybody is up to speed on Avid, then we can address that thing again of how you want to move forward with that. And there's no urgency. You're still getting them the way you always have.
She is going to send me a report that has an invoice summary and copies of the invoices to see if that is an alternative to what we're getting now, which apparently takes 3 hours to put together.
And I was able to get set up with Avid just fine, so.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Okay. The last thing I have, unless you have something for me, is the employees. So in the contract that was approved for field, basically you had positions in there, which ended up being 5 positions, including the manager, right? So I guess there was some discussion about if a position becomes available, we want it filled in 14 days. That is not in the contract, however, it was discussed. Chris did acknowledge that that was discussed. So a couple of things here. One is, if that is the way the board wants it, I'm gonna tell you 14 days is not feasible. It's not reasonable, and it's not gonna happen, because Infomark vets all their employees, and just to get through the background check and the drug screening and all of that, it takes, I mean, it could,
Some weeks.
yeah, so it's not feasible for that. So if you do want that specific thing, then I would ask that the board come up with a reasonable amount of time to be able to do that. Second part of that is, especially if you have an employee that leaves with no notice and they're just like, hey, I'm out. Well, there creates the problem. If someone gives you 2 weeks or something, it's a little more reasonable to be able to make it into that time frame. So it's just gonna vary. Second thing, Sean, or the employee who left, has been gone now, I don't even know, a little over 40 something days now. It may even be 50 days. I'm really not sure, but he left December 2nd. Okay. He came back and then he left again. So to that point, the scope is still being done. He was a CPO certified. You currently don't have one on staff, but we're paying for that to have done. The district's not being paid for it. So we're doing our part because that's part of the scope. Second, we have had Infomark Field out here. Here and there, we've had numerous people out. Brett, we've had some other field managers, we've had some other field staff out here. Not every day, but throughout the whole thing. So we have filled it, we have provided the scope, so I don't see that there's an issue. However, we have hired, if you will, that final spot. They're going through the background check and everything now. So just so the board knows, I don't know if this is a scope-based contract or if you initially entered into it as a body-based. But either way, as long as the scope's being provided, I don't see where there would be an issue. And we also, just for your knowledge, just to be fully transparent, when we were down this final spot, if you will, we also readjusted everyone's pay and took that and invested more in the employees that you have, as opposed to what they were making when we started the contract. So with all that said, I'm happy to do whatever you would like to do, but all I ask is if it is a body-based scope, if you will, and if you want that direct fill within X amount of days, that you give something or a little more leeway than 14 days, because I can tell you that's more times not going to happen than it is. Hopefully we don't have any change in staff, but just in case.
Well,
Just a comment on that.
Sure.
I mean, you're ultimately in charge of the field services. So
Correct.
it's only in your best interest to try and hire somebody as quickly and fill that spot as quickly as possible. So
Correct.
I personally don't know that the board needs to define timeframes. I mean, it
Agreed.
just doesn't make sense.
well,
Right.
I brought it up because when we entered into the contract, it was body-based. So you had this many people for this amount of dollars.
Sure.
So I could foresee that people would be coming and going. And if they're getting paid for a body-based service, and they could leave the position open for 6 months, of course, people would squeal about it, but they would still be collecting from the district for that person's salary, right? And when I asked, Chris said, a couple of weeks would be okay. And I thought, well, that's pretty quick. So, but I wasn't going to argue with it. But I would go with a month without any hesitation here for an open time frame. Because if you don't define it, there's no impetus to hire somebody, right? You got to put a little bit of oomph behind it. Now, is Infomark going to delay things on purpose? No. It doesn't do them any good because they're going to catch a lot of flack because the job's not getting done. But I still think it's a question, and you can either just say, no, don't worry about it, or you can say, we'd like to have people here in 30 days. 30 days seems reasonable. And I think that's what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, currently there's nothing in the contract.
Right. We
It
know.
doesn't say anything. But if you are going to hold us to that, I want to make sure we're very clear on what the board's expectations are, because
Right.
it needs to be clear.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm fine with, as long as it's, I don't care if you hire 2 super dynamo employees that work,
Get the
you know,
same-
40 hours overtime
Right,
every
and-
week. It doesn't matter. I don't need to count bodies.
That's my point to the board, because I want it to be very clear before we leave here. Is this a body-based contract of what you're viewing it, or is it a scope-based? Because if it's scope-based, like you just said, I can hire 50 people to come in and do this
Mhm.
job, and that's on me, or I can hire 2 people to do it. If the scope's not being met, clearly it's going to show through, and that's going to be an issue. So that's kind of what I want to clear up too, because I don't want there to be misunderstanding of, oh my gosh, you only have 2 people, or you have 5, or whatever it is.
Well, doesn't the contract enumerate
Calls
the,
out 5 people.
It doesn't call out 5 people.
Yeah, it does. 5
provides-
positions.
it
I think we
provides
need
5
to,
5 job descriptions is what it calls
Right.
for.
I thi-
A
I-
dock master, you know, the things that need to be taken care of, each one of them have a scope.
right, so I think it's not clear. I think the contract is what designates whether it's a scope-based or a person-based. And because the contract isn't clear, because it sort of does both, I think what you're asking is, can we please have 30 days to fill a spot? Is that what you're asking?
All I'm asking, it was brought up, current amount of days is not in the contract, and I wasn't actually too concerned with it myself. It was brought up that, hey, it's been X amount of days and this position hasn't been filled, and you're supposed to fill it within 2 weeks. And I was like, huh? It's not in the contract. So I reached out to Chris, and Chris did acknowledge that that conversation took place.
And I recall the
I do too.
conversation. And
So I just want to be clear, because, you know, I want to do whatever the board wants to do. And I'm saying, if you do want it to be a time frame, that's fine, totally fine. But I'm telling you, 14 days, it's not reasonable.
We agree.
It's not feasible. That's all.
We agree.
That's all. So,
I thought it was too short when Chris agreed to it. So,
yeah,
you know,
so it's whatever you all would like. I just want clarity and make sure we're all on the same page. That's all.
I think that we've developed a good integral relationship with Infomark. If they screw up, they fix it. We generally get the truth. I don't want to hold anybody's feet to the fire. No. And that's why, you know, if we want to have a generally, I'm willing to say, I'm fine with revising the original agreement of Chris for 2 weeks to out to 30 days. And if that means 32 days to get somebody in there, so what? It's not a big deal. That's just my point at the moment. Because I think it's a body-based contract. We have a
So-
count of people.
what we'll do, unless you tell me otherwise, we'll leave it as is. We'll base it on a 30-day approximate.
Okay.
And then if there's another issue, then we'll
Okay.
address it.
Okay, perfect.
We do need
Yes.
CPOs.
But.
Because I've been amazed at the different faces that have come through since we've had the opening. And I think it's 2,000 a month that you're paying for our pool
Yes.
coverage.
Right.
Okay.
And we will continue to do that until the gentlemen that we have, 2 of them that have passed their test, which they're in the process of doing now. So once that happens and they're up to speed and everything, then we'll move away from that. But until then,
Mhm.
we will continue.
And we've got
paying
somebody
them.
coming on board.
Is the body-based question answered?
I mean,
I don't think it can be because the contract itself mentions both scope and people. So I don't know that
I
we
mean,
can
there's a
answer
third
that.
Component, it's not really mutually exclusive, but it's performance too.
Right,
Right.
So just because you meet the scope doesn't mean that the performance is there.
correct.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Can-
while
Just
we're-
because I have
Can
5
you
people
lower
there
Mike's
doesn't mean
bass?
So if we have further
He's got good
problems, we'll go
feedback.
back and revisit the contract.
It's just a matter of protecting the district's money
Mhm.
where you're paying people,
I get it.
you know. Along those lines with the CPO, we're gonna end up with 2 CPOs.
You may end up with more. We may get everybody
Well,
on staff.
that's okay.
75.
Well, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Along those lines with licensing, how many licensed herbicide people do we have? Just one?
Just one. We're looking into that.
Yes, I think there's been some
You know,
discussion.
you're
of
thinking
having-
ahead of me here. You knew where I was going.
All right, any
You're talking
further
too much.
business from the district manager?
Yes, I do. The
Quick,
landscape
quickly.
RFP. What are we doing?
So that is gonna be on your agenda next month. I had it in the agenda for this month. It inadvertently, by me, my office, was left off. So it is prepared, correct, It's ready to go with all of the supervisors.
Of course he's
Comments
gonna say
and
yes.
discussion. Well, it is. He's looking at me like it was supposed to be on the agenda this time, and he's right, it was. So it will be in
So
your.
we'll
agenda.
have it next month.
You mean those people down in Coral Springs blew it?
All right,
No,
Oh.
I did.
Okay, no, you're all right.
okay.
Yes.
Last
Uh,
one for you is conditions at the pool.
What's your question?
Well, have we accepted, have we accepted the pool? It's not finished? No, okay,
We have a final walkthrough schedule.
enough said.
And until I can get into the water and down on the bottom and check everything out.
I've been there.
Oh, you have?
It's
Is
not.
it- It's not ready? Okay. So I'll let him go in the cold. The water's warm, the water's beautiful.
Water's gorgeous.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Should be
And you know, I gotta tell you.
80 degrees.
And let me tell you, I'll have to educate everybody on Facebook about thermal mass and the amount of time and energy it takes to get a
Please,
full
please do.
pool up to.
The
want-
best,
So
the
quit
the
complaining.
best time for that
folks.
pool will be
about-
Sunday morning at about 7 AM.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
water is
so
gonna
we
feel
need
like
to
a
move
sauna.
on.
Yes,
Um,
I'm done with her.
All right, we are now, anybody else have anything for our district?
Let's get to the engineer. He brought
Okay,
12 tons of paper. Look at all this stuff.
all right.
Wow.
We didn't get charged for that, did we? Say
Of
no.
course you did.
Say no. We say no.
He's gonna be here so long, he's putting a chair in front of him, so.
All right, first,
Your body-based engineer is here for. um, So even though there's 12 items on my report, I'm only going to go over 6 that are worthy of discussion. The first one involving Bowman and Blair, who are going to talk about their environmental assessment, the results of that, and also then after that, the proposal that's in front of you for discussion. And then I'll take over all the geeky engineering stuff. So.
Sam,
Mr. Engineer, and with the chairwoman's okay,
Mhm.
whenever you bring a guest like this, perhaps we can move those guests to the beginning so
we had
that,
a lot of guests today. so
well, I understand that, but these folks have been sitting here for an hour and 3/4.
I understand.
You know where I'm going here. So whenever you bring a guest, just let somebody know and we can at least get them done and we'll let you wait till later, but we don't want you guests to keep waiting.
Okay,
How's that?
sounds fair. I'm going to introduce Catherine Bowman. She's going to talk about the assessment and the proposal.
All
and
right.
I'll step in for the remainder of the
Okay.
time.
Dan, can you put the pictures up? Is it,
Yeah, give me a moment here.
Join the crowd, don't worry. we
I-
won't take you back.
I don't want you to drop
It's not
off.
bad, you're a friend so far.
They are in the packet. so
Thanks for coming. Take care.
Bye, thank
So,
you. Ms. Bowman, can I call you our environmental Catherine?
Ecological consultant,
Okay, ecological services consultant.
right, as opposed to environmental, which has to do more often with
Okay.
hazardous materials and those sorts of things, non-ecological things, non-plants and animals. Do they need exhibits?
No, I got
Do I
you.
need to point to anything?
No, you can just talk about your assessment is
Okay,
here if you need to flip through it
I
and your
do.
proposal.
And where is your map that we looked at?
That's just
back in the
It's- it
packet?
should be-
Yes, thank you.
On December 28th, we, my partner Ron Blair and our assistant, a field assistant, came down and toured the CDD-owned and controlled wetland areas that are part of what is being monitored, has been monitored as to comply with South Florida Water Management District permitting requirements. And specifically, what was being monitored and needs to continue to be monitored are the invasive exotics plants that are have invaded most of the wetlands pretty significantly. We toured, I think, all but wetlands 13 and 14, and we were able to walk into a lot of it. We spent the day out here. We were Teresa and her staff hosted us and showed us all the areas that they thought were problems, areas that the Water Management District's compliance staff had pointed out as specific areas that they wanted to track intensively and have better reporting on. We looked at where there had been monitoring trans